Welcome to Product Success Management Issues, the podcast and video series that explores in depth with experienced product managers and product marketing managers the key issues that affect product success. Sponsored by Wiley and my company, Spice Catalyst, I am Dave Fradin, your host and the author of Foundations in the Successful Management of Products series of books and courses published by Wiley. Be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn. Be sure to connect with my guest also. Hi, good to see you.
Hi, my name is Raja. I'm part of a company named Appnomic Systems. We deal in application performance management. I have been with Appnomic doing outbound product management, basically, which means that I tend to talk with a lot of customers, a lot of prospects, try to see where our solution fits in, trying to figure out, is that what really the customers are looking for? And then tend to get a lot of inputs from the customers, note it down, come back to my team, and then give it back to the team in terms of new requirements or use cases. Many a times I actually have to have multiple rounds of discussions with the prospects or the customers, so that we get a clarity in what exactly has to be built in. I joined 7 years back, and before that I was in a disaster recovery management company, Sanofi, which was bought over by IBM last year.
Now, you have a unique situation. We call that product marketing as opposed to product management, or product marketing management. And historically, when I was a product manager at Apple and at HP, my official title was product marketing management, even though I was doing product management. In the pragmatic definition, outbound is product marketing management and inbound is product management. So it's been a little bit of the confusion over titles since 1938 and exactly what we do. So that's not unusual. Why did your company structure it this way or title it this way, or was that your decision?
Okay, so see, all the while I have been working with startups, and this is also one of the startups which started as a niche skill set. And initially, in any startup, right, we typically don't tend to get a lot of funds to invest in different verticals, and so in fact, we also had to double up as the initial developers, coming up with some prototypes. And that's how the whole product management as a label or as a name got onto it. But you're right, you're absolutely right. It's more a function of a product marketing, than the product management. Eventually, we would structure. We would really, when we grow big, we'll get to that stage.
Gotcha. So I think you've described some of your functions already. Are there any other things that you do?
Basically, prototyping is what I do, and I do solutioning, because solutioning typically means that I need to figure out how exactly the product is gonna fit in. In a way, it actually overlaps into sales engineering, but it's too early for us to get to proper structure of a sales engineers. So we have to double up on those things. So basically, from the time, from the point of coming up with a new pitch, sales pitch, pitching it to the customers, validating our pitch, then making the customers understanding their pain points, putting a solution together, if need be, run down a pilot or a proof of concept, and then take all the inputs what they have, go back to the engineering or the my team who put in some kind of specs, and then give it back to the engineering, explain to them the use cases, saying that, hey, this is how customers tend to use your product, and this is what they're actually looking at from a pain point solving perspective, and then help the sales guys come up with some kind of a sales numbering. So I tend to put my feet in a lot of buckets, a lot of boats, but eventually, yeah, this is what I do.
Well, it sounds like when you're going out and trying to find out what the customer's needs are so that you could put together a prototype or demo that matches it to their needs, that is the product management function also. That's the inbound kind of thing.
Absolutely. So we do that. We do that. In fact, I personally do that because what we have seen is the minute I start pulling in my team who actually are writing the specs and talking to the engineering or a couple of engineering guys, then the so-called schedule timelines which we are trying to build the product, they actually hampers them. So I take up this whole role and do this activity.
Gotcha. So is your group located in engineering or in sales or marketing?
We overlap into everyone. I mean, of course, for sure, we're not in engineering, that's for sure. But we are actually sales and marketing. And of course, we call ourselves product managers.
Who do you report to from a position standpoint?
From a position standpoint, it's pretty haywire, but I personally report onto the CEO.
Ah, okay. So that's the latest innovation over the last 10 or 20 years is to have a VP level of product management and have reporting directly to the CEO, which puts you at the same level as the VP of engineering and the VP of sales and the VP of marketing and the VP of HR. Yeah, and that's what Apple has done. That's what Facebook has done, and one of the reasons why they've been successful. So I understand you have 4 people that report to you.
Yes.
And tell us what they do and how they're structured.
Okay, so it's a pretty flat structure. There's nothing called the reporting between them. So the way it happens here is I actually come in, and then the way they actually are structured is like one takes care of the backend active, the ML engine. One actually talks about the database and the database structures. One takes care of the UI and UX, and the other one, we have a tricky part of the usage. So what we mean by usage is the field usage. So majority of my field existing customers and my field-facing engineers, they come up with a lot of feedback onto the product. So that particular role talks to only the field guys, existing in-house company field guys, and then take all the inputs. And when I talk about inputs, it's like they document it, they understand the use cases. Sure, you're saying something.
Gotcha. So when you have a prospective engagement in order to put together the prototype, the demo, whatever it is, all 4 members of the team work on it in each of their areas of expertise.
Well, no. So from a demo and prototyping perspective, it's me alone who actually take it because I understand the whole solutioning more than these 4. These 4 are basically, they talk majorly with the engineering team and then try to explain to them on what the product spec they have actually putting together, and then they maintain the whole product management portfolio in terms of the previous version. This is how this whole feature functionality was. Now in the current release, this is how that functionality is going to change. It is based on this customer requirement, or this is why this is a new prospect who's actually trying to look at this particular feature in a particular way. So these are the people who actually directly talk to the engineering and explain to them. The reason we've actually built it like this is because 7.5, 8 years back when I joined in, and we realized that majority of our engineering deadlines were actually slipping. It's because the engineering team came back and said, hey, the specs provided by the product management were pretty vague. And vague in terms of, they came back and said, like even the corner cases or the error conditions, many a times we assume that, because it's all startup, we assume that, this is how it is. but the engineering actually did not think it that way. It was a learning for us too, in fact, you know.
And that's why those positions were developed?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So does the UX guy focus pretty much exclusively on UX and
Yes.
and the expertise of the other three people, the same kind of thing, translating, so to speak, the customer's requirements to the engineers to help ensure they implement it that way?
True.
Gotcha. That's interesting. You had mentioned that, well, first let me ask you, do you have a product management lifecycle framework that you use for each of these customers as a process that you repeat over and over again?
Yeah, so we are in the process of actually developing them. It's not yet. I don't want to say that we don't have, but at the same time, it's not as matured as like matured organizations. We're still in a very early stage. But what we do have is like, time and again, we keep documenting what all are the learnings which we actually have. So what happens here is we are trying to, even how much ever we talk about that whole agile practice and things like that, we figure out that there are a lot of places we don't fall into the normal life cycle which most of the product management organizations they actually follow. So there are a lot of deviations which are there, which of course my team works on, and I know eventually I would be actually doing a lot of the whole sales engineering kind of a process, and then we'll actually completely spin off that whole and divide this whole team. So I actually sort of am trying to get in, somebody who can actually really bring in these kind of processes in place so that that whole organization as a true product management can actually take care of that. So that's so to answer your question in a nutshell, we are still developing that whole thing in place.
Understood. So you said some of the product management lifecycle frameworks don't fit in some instances. Which ones are you speaking of? Can you give an example or two?
Okay, so things in terms of the data capture or the requirement capture, and then coming up with the requirement documentation. So typically what we have seen is that whole process for some strange reason was not working out well. It could be because we had to, as a startup, we had to actually show numbers to our investors. So we had to get, there are a lot of places we have to cut short a lot of things. Like, I go to a customer, talk to them and say that, hey, this is what we actually offer customers. Can you do something like this? Yes, it is doable. So there are a lot of places where we end up reverse engineering that whole product management specifications where the prototype is built first, and then based on that, the requirements are actually written.
That's because they have to see it and touch it first and taste it before they can figure out what they want. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I came up with the notion of going out and understanding exactly what your customer wants to do by observing what they're doing, not asking them what they want. Because you probably heard the story, and I tell it over and over again, Henry Ford allegedly went out and asked people if they wanted a car. They said, no, we wanted a faster horse. But if he just went out and stood on the corner, he would notice that people were rushing from place to place, and horses drawing carriages of goods were galloping to get to someplace on time. They just want to get from A to B faster. So do you incorporate some of those techniques? Just go observe what the customer is doing?
So we do that, especially that's one of my roles is like when we do a pilot or when we do put up a demo thing in place, rather than me talking what this whole functionality is all about, I just showcase a couple of things and then talk about a couple of use cases, and then I just pause and then I keep asking a lot of questions in terms of how they feel that this particular functionality is going to fit in their organization.
Okay, that's close to that, yeah.
Yes, so typically what happens is my target audience are like the DevOps guys and the operational IT ops teams. So I tend to talk a lot with these people and then try to figure out if this particular functionality, is it like redundant to what they're already doing? or the tools what they already have, or you know, uh, or is it like a process which they already follow, and is this kind of a feature going to help them, or change the direction in completely, like many a times, because we are in application performance management space. We have to talk to the application binaries and application transactions directly. So what happens in that is the IT ops guys, they don't have visibility into the app layer. So they come back and say, hey, you know what, if you're touching my app, then you're talking to a wrong person. Whereas our tool is actually built for the IT ops guys only.
Gotcha.
Because many a time there's a finger pointing which happens. The app guy comes back and says, hey, the ops guys not configure it the way I actually talk to them. Whereas the ops guy comes back and says, your app itself is not configured properly, or you've not built it properly. Around 90% of your processing power, which I have provisioned, is still vacant, is still idle. How come your app is not functioning? So this kind of finger pointing keeps happening. So my target audience are always the IT ops guys, and this is how it happens.
Yeah, I once had a customer that told me that their lack of a process, following a framework, results in a culture of blame, which is exactly what you're talking about. People start pointing fingers, and one of the flaws of the frameworks that you've seen is that they're not they're heavyweight, they're not agile enough, and as a result of that, because you got to produce financial results, you got a small organization, you have to skip some of those things because you just don't have time to do that.
Right.
Have you had a chance to look at the framework I've put together, which is trying to resolve those kinds of issues?
Not yet. Trust me, I'll be very open with you. Not yet. Sorry.
I think you're going to go look at it now. And it's up on my website, spicecatalyst.com, under framework, as one of the blog articles. And I appreciate you looking at it and giving me some feedback as to if you agree with it or what changes you would make to it. In that blog article, I talk about the 8 problems with the existing frameworks, from Pragmatic, the AISPM or something like that, the International Association of Product Managers, the frameworks from Pragmatic and Adaptive Technology and the Institute of Product Leadership and so forth. And they all tend to ignore things like Agile. They're very weak on gathering what we call customer requirements. I say that's understanding what your customer wants to do, then interviewing them about that, then doing surveys about that, and then if you have big data available, verifying it with big data. So when you decide to go out and hire a product manager or a product marketing manager, what kinds of things are most important for you to look for?
Okay, so from a growth or from a scaling perspective, right? The first thing which we would always love to look at is, like, this guy should have worked in a startup, because one thing is a startup culture is a lot different than a process oriented. Process oriented is the wrong word, but a huge organization, a bigger organization. The reason being is in a smaller organization or in a startup, we tend to fix a single problem. Okay, startups typically evolve because they are trying to solve one particular niche problem, and they also get a good funding for it. But eventually, this niche single problem solving solution eventually have to fit into a bigger umbrella, right? That's why these whole mergers and consolidation of companies or startups, they do happen. It's because of that. So to give you a small example, let's assume that somebody is trying to do some service dependency mapper. Somebody is building a service dependency mapper. That's a very niche skill in terms of IT operations. So what happens in this is they will also get a good funding. They'll also get their first 5 to 10 customers because they have a lot of good friends in the market who are ready to give them a shot, and then, but that does not mean that they're on the way to success. Not yet. They're still not yet crossed that crossing of the chasm is what I actually talked about. So they have not yet crossed that. So, but eventually, when they get acquired by a bigger organization or a bigger framework-based company, they try to fit in this small dependency mapper into their bigger umbrella which they're trying to offer.
The startup is trying to offer that bigger map. Gotcha.
Right.
While they're trying to provide a point solution.
No, the startup always works on a point solution,
Right.
but a bigger fish, like companies like HP or IBM or Cisco, they try to acquire the small startups so that for that niche skill which they actually have built, which could be plugged into their bigger umbrella or bigger platform which they actually already have.
Right.
Right. So what happens in this whole framework is somebody should have actually worked in a startup so that the culture matching actually happens. At the same time, they can actually fit this whole thing into the bigger platform. So at every stage of a startup, you need a different skill set of people. It could be from the sales to engineering to product managers to everything. So at every stage, you need to have different kind of people. Now, why I actually talked about that somebody should be a startup with a startup background is because eventually when you actually cross this and you're actually going to an acquisition layer, these people whom we have recruited, they should now stop looking at a 360 and they should start looking at, my vertical is only product management and product specifications. I will not even worry about the outbound. I'll only talk about only the inbound part.
That's as the organization grows.
That's as the organization grows. So these people should be adaptable by themselves. So we need to look at people who are ready to adapt themselves in that way. And that is the biggest challenge which we face everywhere.
Because if you hire an enterprise guy,
yes,
they have a lot more resources around them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this is the biggest challenge which we always face.
How about the issue of domain expertise?
Well, see, that always plays a role. See, of course, I will never want to take, like for example, I would not take a banking guy, somebody who's experienced in banking software and a product manager, and then I'll try to pull him into a IT operational expertise kind of a mode. I would never do that. That anyway is understood. I mean, I presume that it's understood. So I'll always look at that.
If someone came along and said they would like to become a product manager, what do you suggest?
Of course, I would always give them a chance. I won't say no, but even before that, the first thing I would actually try to see is how adaptable people are in terms of, it doesn't matter whether they're like product management or like head of engineering, or somebody should have done this work in their past. Probably I would actually take those kind of people only. Somebody new who's actually like fresh out of the college, a kid comes out and says, hey, you know what, I want to actually become a product manager.
Or a sales guy, or an engineer, or a marketing person, or a biz dev person, or pre-sales support. What would you tell those guys?
So I would actually, the first thing I would to see is, do they really have a inclination towards this kind of an activity or not? So there are two things. Everybody have two major things with them. One is what they really want to do, and the second one is what they're good in doing.
So the inclination is they want to do this. Okay.
Right. The inclination is what they want to do it. And what they're good in, many a times people don't want to do what they're good at. They want to do something else.
They want to do something else? They want to diversify? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Right. And in fact, like for example, a good pre-sales guy or a sales engineer who's been doing sales engineering from like last 10, 15 years, he would really love to get into a new job as a product manager. Why? Because all the while he's been, in his earlier company, he's been, he's been talking to customers, he's been taking feedback on where the product does not work, and then he actually goes back and gives those inputs to the product management team, and eventually he figures out that those guys are actually not building it. They're not building what he's actually talking about.
Then they get their fingers out and start pointing. Yeah.
Right? And now he wants to do a difference in his life. He says,
Right.
why can't I do it?
Gotcha.
And you tend to find a lot of these kind of people out there.
Ah, so they want to get involved with the solution that is satisfactory to the customer. And they believe, as is the case, that the product manager's role is to ensure that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time, and thanks for joining us.
Oh, same here. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of my guest and myself, thanks for joining us on Product Success Management Issues. I am Dave Fradin. Be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn.